breathe. Okay, we got some multiple check marks here. We're going to let it go for a second until I get the all systems clear from John K. or the boss man, Chad. He's going to make sure that we're going live on our Facebook group. You guys should definitely follow that. It is the Mile High Huddle super fans. So that's a page with a lot of content, a lot of chat going on. It's Facebook, so it's got all walks of life, but we got the thumbs up now. So guys, welcome. Happy Tuesday night. It's a dreary, rainy day in Seattle here. Shock, that's kind of what's life out here in the Pacific Northwest this time of year. But, a little less dreary being able to come in here and talk football. Denver Broncos, obviously not in the postseason, but, it never stops here. It's always interesting. Broncos always find themselves in the headlines, still going so with the general manager search going on, potentially wrapping up here pretty soon. But I want to kick it over to Carl. Carl, how you doing on this fine Tuesday evening?
I'm doing great. So you are missing great weather in the Midwest. I'm in flip-flops today and possibly hitting the links tomorrow. We'll see. It's not a normal January around here, but I'll take it. And very excited to talk some Bronco football. Lots of information coming out today of possibly some narrowing of the GM. So I'm excited to get to talk that with you.
Yeah, and also shout out to Pobby. I got a Christmas gift from her, and it's a really nice Broncos tie blanket. Ooh. And I'm in my basement here. It's pretty much the only room where the dog and the cat wouldn't bother me during filming this. And I'm staying really nice and toasty under my gift from Pobby. So shout out to her. She is a very helpful person on this chat, and we really do appreciate her. Also got a coffee mug and a calendar from her. So, man, above and beyond, man. The Mile High Huddle supporters are one of a kind, man. I mean, Bronco fans are a tier, but then there's the S tier, which is the Mile High Huddle supporters. So
that's right.
Speaking of which, guys, speaking of that S tier, tonight's live stream is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos country. Gambling is now legal in the great state of Colorado, and you're looking to make more watching your favorite sports just a little bit more interesting. Sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer destination, and here's why. They have sharp odds and low juice. They have in-house bookmakers, so they don't use a third-party provider of odds, which means for you, they have reduced juice and the best prices. They also have a hassle-free bonus with a one-time rollover, which means the bonus money is yours after you bet it just one time. There are some other sports betting sites out there. We're not going to give them any airtime, not because they're not, our patronage, but some of them you have to bet 5 to 30 times before you can see any of that cash. And for sportsbetting.com, that's not the case. You bet once, you can get the cash if you win. And they also have 24/7 live customer support, so they always have a real person in the United States answering your calls. That's always very helpful. I was on customer support today for about 30 minutes, and man, it was not somebody from the U.S., so that was, it is what it is, but that's not true for sportsbetting.com. Also, here's the kicker. Right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will match it up to $750. That's $750 in free bet credits. You don't even have to, that's not even your money. It's free. It's given to you. Why aren't you using it? Plus, right now, with the NBA season set to tip off, I mean, we're underway. You also get a $25 free bet credit. So might as well use that as well. It's free money. It's just sitting there. If you don't use it, it's gone. So head on over to sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle. Again, that's sportsbetting.com/Mile High Huddle and capitalize on up to $750 in free bet credits and start this year, 2021. It's a little bit tumultuous to start. Start off on the right foot on your sports betting end. Also, guys, make sure you find us on Twitter. We have the great Carl Dumler in the house. You can see him right there at Carl Dumler MHH. Also, I always tease John that I'm going to pull him up when I'm doing these reads. He'll always take himself off camera as soon as I even mention that. He just did in our chat room here, so that's hilarious. But follow him as well at John K MHH. Also, guys, if you're joining us on YouTube today, biggest thing you can do to help us, if you like us at all, or if you like the community here, if you just want to support us, you think Carl and I are a couple of nice Midwest guys talking some Broncos football. The biggest thing you can do for us, like, subscribe, and share our show on YouTube. You click that little bell notification. Once we're live, then you'll know you can join us. You can come talk some football. We're all about that. Also on Facebook, folks, click those thumbs up, share the show. Just get us out there. If you like it, that's great. Also, if you go to iTunes, you can give us a 5-star rating and a comment. Those are always very helpful as well. Also, guys, don't miss any of our great off-season content that is in full steam now. I mean, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to write another draft piece because it's draft season for building the Broncos. I mean, it's always draft season for building the Broncos, but now we're full in draft season. So really excited about that, and know that this podcast is part of Sports Illustrated, which is also a part of Fan Nation and brought to you by Overtime Media. So Carl, you are the one who came up with the content today, the main topic of what we want to talk about. And I'll kick it over to you just to kind of lay some groundwork here. Obviously the Broncos, they have two main candidates right now in Fontenot and Paton. We're going to pronounce those correctly as the most probable two general manager candidates for the Broncos. I believe Paton is either leaving Denver now or had his interview. He might be in it still. Might be, obviously, with the sick little bug going around. They can't meet at Elway Steakhouse like they normally would. But so the in-person interview happened. Won't happen with Fontenot because the Saints beat up on the Bears on Nickelodeon. Gosh, what 2021 is wild, man. It's already just crazy. But so we are Nickelodeon. You're kidding me. And I've also had somebody drop the F-bomb like on it as well. It's like unbelievable. But yeah, so we are here talking about the general manager position and what that could mean for the Broncos, specifically the quarterback position. It's always a quarterback position. We're not talking running backs out of the gate. We'll probably get around to it at some point because Buona always seems to point those chats up just to tease me. But appreciate it. So Carl, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, like you said, we're down to pretty much two guys, unless they get better offers at other places. Because I know that Fontenot has an offer from Atlanta, and Paton has an offer from Detroit. So it's not a done deal that the Broncos have locked up Paton by any means. I know there's a lot of speculation that there's a good chance they're going to get it done, and I know the Broncos want to get something done in the near future. They'd like to go ahead and get that going, and you got Senior Bowl coming up pretty soon. You like to have kind of general manager in place so they can start figuring out some big boards and everything else, get interviews going with all those players. But right now it does seem like it's come down to those two guys. And Mike Liss recently talked about how all of the main candidates, Champ Kelly included, because he's still in the running.
Sounds like it's more director of player personnel for him. But I mean, if both those guys back out, it could be Champ Kelly. I mean, that's just the reality.
Right. And it sounds like all of them had a little bit different view of how they want to attack the quarterback position. And so we can talk about that a little bit. The guy that I would guess would be the most aggressive at the quarterback position would be George Paton. Just
why is that?
Because of what they've done in Minnesota. They have been one of the most aggressive teams trying to find a quarterback. And I know most people will point to, well, they haven't found one. Well, you keep trying. There's a lot of teams out there that stop trying, that kind of half-heartedly go into a situation instead of being willing to take a chance. And I had this conversation earlier on Twitter about this, that the best teams in football are the teams that are willing to take a chance. You look at the Chiefs. They traded up for Patrick Mahomes when they had Alex Smith. Alex Smith is good enough to get teams to playoffs. He just got Washington into the playoffs.
Do we count that? The NFC East? I mean, okay.
I'm still going to – he still got him to 7 wins.
That's fair.
And it wasn't all him, obviously. That defensive line was outstanding. Yeah. But still, Alex Smith, before his injury, is a quality starter in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And they still said this is not enough. The Bills, they traded up to get their guy, Josh Allen.
After making the playoffs.
Right. Because they realized we have to get this quarterback position figured out. Chiefs trading for Frank Clark. They traded a first and a third or a first and a second to get Frank Clark.
And then shipped off D Ford, but yeah.
Well, yeah. But I mean, you're seeing these teams that are trying to go win championships. They have to take some chances. And I know that also means then you're going to risk possibly destroying the team, that you're not going to get your guy, that it's not going to work out. But again, you just can't sit there and kind of hope that something's going to work out. You got to go do something about it. And so that's the nice thing that you see with what Minnesota has done, is that they have continued to try to find somebody. What I mean by that is using a first-round pick on Teddy Bridgewater. I'm trying to who was
traded the guy for Sam Bradford?
Sam Bradford with a first and a fourth-round pick after they had an injury.
Every time, if the Rams won the Super Bowl, it would have turned into a second-round pick or maybe even a first-round pick. I love those trades where they have qualifiers. I wish more teams did that. Like if the Broncos traded Justin Simmons this year, let's say hypothetically in the trade deadline, and the team that he was traded to went on to win a Super Bowl, that pick should be worth more. Like I don't understand why teams don't use those qualifier trades more often. But anyway, continue.
Yes. Anyway, so Case Keenum obviously had a good season, but then they were like, you know what? Case Keenum is not good enough to win a Super Bowl for us. And so then they went and paid Kirk Cousins, which we can argue whether Kirk Cousins is a big enough step up to close the gap of what they needed. But again, it still shows that they were willing to be aggressive. They're willing to spend money. They're willing to spend draft capital. and trying to get the quarterback position right. And so I love that. I love that, he's going to look at every avenue possible. I think that's one of my biggest worries sometimes is a guy gets so locked into, well, this guy's good enough, so we're going to keep sticking with him. Derek Carr is a great example. He is good enough, but you're seeing that he's an above average quarterback. He's a good quarterback. I'm not willing. I don't always give him
Derek Carr is good
credit
enough to win a Super Bowl, but you need to have like a really good defense and a good team around him. There are quarterbacks out there where, the season's already over. You'd have to have an all-time defense with an all-time offensive line to do it. And I think with Derek Carr, if you had like a top 15 offense and a top 10 defense and the ball bounced the right way, because all you really need is, obviously the better team typically wins, but look at the 2012 Broncos and Ravens. All you need is a ticket to the dance, and then you have a shot. So I think Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, and at today's date, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, all those quarterbacks are the ones where you have to have the right team around them, but I think they're good enough to win a Super Bowl. People are going to get upset about, and Dak Prescott maybe in that a little bit better because younger, but people are going to get upset about, Kirk Cousins this year. Oh man, they paid all this money. He didn't do anything. If anybody watched the Vikings this year and saw their defensive line, which was just, for a Zimmer defense to have the defensive line as bad as it was, it's unbelievable. You can't get that upset. It's kind of like last night people were saying Justin Fields is trash when Alabama put up 35 points in the first half. Like, what is he supposed to do? Suit up and play defense? Like, at some point you got to be like, you have to have a good enough defense to do it. Not everybody can be Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, but anyway, sorry, it's kind of a tangent there, but go ahead.
Yeah, but I guess, and here's how else I look at this. When I'm looking at especially Drew Lock and whether the Broncos should move forward with him, think about the AFC itself. You've got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, you've got Herbert, just looking like he's going to be a star. You got Watson, who
Lamar
maybe
Jackson
could get out of the AFC. We'll see if he gets traded or not. Yeah, hopefully. But you've got some of the top quarterbacks in the entire league. And this isn't even mentioning guys like Ben Roethlisberger. Even Phillip Rivers has played pretty decent this year. But, right now, this past season, you have to admit, Drew Lock was the fourth best quarterback in the AFC West.
Clearly.
And it wasn't close. There was a pretty big tier drop-off from Derek Carr to Drew Lock. And so, that's why you have to be willing to have the conversation and look at all the options out there. Can Drew Lock get into that conversation with those other guys? Personally, I have some doubts about that. And so the issue is you got 2 more years of cost control with him, and then you got to pay him. Let's say he looks like an average quarterback. Well, then you kind of get locked into paying an average quarterback big money, kind of the Joe Flacco situation.
Andy Dalton contract too.
Yeah. And those guys are decent quarterbacks who won a lot of games and did enough on good teams. Yeah. But once you pay that quarterback, you got to think, can this guy help carry this team once other guys can't get paid? And again, I just have my doubts about Drew Lock, which is why it is always worth looking at every option possible, because there are some good options for the Broncos. And even Dane Brugler, I just wrote an article about his mock draft that he had come out. That should be out here sometime this evening. But he talked about around the league, the 2022 NFL draft quarterback class, most teams are pretty low on it. They don't see a guy that really jumps off the page. Sam Howell maybe a little bit, but there's no guy that makes you go, this is Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. We
knew a year ago at this point, we knew those guys were dudes, right? And so it's kind of like, gosh, I don't want to be, you're relying on a Joe Burrow transcendence. And at that point, when you're expecting to be picking outside the top 10 next year, probably with equal capital, it's going to cost more to go up. I don't know. It's a dangerous game to play. Now, obviously, there are guys who could come up and be awesome, but then every year also you have guys like Matt Barkley, where if they would have come out the year before, top 10, top 5 pick, then they have a bad year, and now they're a round 3 quarterback and irrelevant. Jimmy Clausen's of the world, etc. Drew Lock. Yep. Drew Lock's another one. He thought if he would have came out his junior year, people were like, oh, this guy's got top 10, top 15 tools. And he goes back and he falls to pick 42. So it's hard to play that game. And that's why you have to really focus on the here and now and what's in front of you. So, and I think that's interesting for Paton as well. I do like that he has been aggressive at the quarterback position. I do like he's coming in with a fresh set of eyeballs. I know that Drew Lock has turned into this toxic mess in the fan base, and I think that's that's not an indictment on Broncos country. That's more of an indictment on the decorum on social media across the world.
Right.
But still, I think it's something that you have to be intellectually honest enough that you're going to have that conversation. That's probably the first question that George Paton had when he came in, is like, okay, what are you going to do at the quarterback position? Is Drew Lock your guy? There's been some rumors that he's going to look for a veteran free agent. I mean, who the hell knows? There's been some talk he'd be aggressive to trade up for a quarterback. I mean, you really just don't know at this point. I mean, there are people who are staunch, adamant Drew Lock supporters. He can do no wrong. He's going to end up a top 10 quarterback. And then there are people like my favorite recent follower of mine, Woody Page, humble brag. He's following me now on Twitter. Love Woody Page. God, he's so funny. But he's just pretty much saying, like, all these people are sending him trade examples, and he's like, who wants Drew Lock? Question mark. Like, and he's saying, I'm not anti Drew Lock, which, I mean, I don't know about that based on his rhetoric, but it's really all across the board. And I'm just hoping that, whatever way it goes, I hope the Broncos get it right, because in the AFC West for the next 10, 15 years with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, unless you have an all-time defense, which is harder to get an all-time defense than a franchise quarterback. I mean, there's one every 5 years at this point, that kind of thing. Yep. That's harder to get than a franchise quarterback. Unless you have that all-time defense, you're not going to compete.
Right. And that lasts a year or two.
Yeah.
We're talking the next 15 to 20 years with these quarterbacks being in this division. I'd like to win the division more than once, and that's that time span. But all right, let's get to some super chats here, because we've been talking here for quite a while. But Kenneth Booker coming in here with a super chat. Appreciate that. What do you think about Thomas Dimitroff as GM?
I've had the pleasure of talking with Thomas Dimitroff at the Combine. And one thing that talking about him around the league, and this was when the Falcons were coming off that Super Bowl, and when the 28-3, everybody, they're a meme. Gosh, the Falcons. But anyway, everybody talks about Thomas Dimitroff as being a guy who is extremely approachable. And if you have anything of football knowledge at all or opinions, he will sit down and parse it out with you. So I think there is something of value there to be open-minded and to bring an all information approach. However, with Arthur Blank, the ownership, and how the Falcons have continually kicked the can with those contracts, they're in a really bad situation. Also, they are stuck with a quarterback who is, let's just call it as it is. Matt Ryan is a quarterback, which it's kind of the case with many of these quarterbacks these days, especially the aging ones, where you're going to be capped on offense every single year, depending on how good your offensive line is. I mean, they invested 2 rookie first-round picks a couple years ago on the offensive line. Those guys take a few years to develop. But Matt Ryan is just such a pocket quarterback that unless your offensive line is set, your offense is not going to do things. You have to have that offensive line. So I think that Dimitroff would be interesting to bring in, not as a general manager, but I do like the experience, and I also like he's definitely open-minded to analytics, different approaches. And again, he doesn't have this really rich owner that's trying to go all in now like Arthur Blank. So maybe he would be a better guy to bring in with a different expectations and goals over the top of him. But he's not in the running, at least right now.
All right. Well, Kenneth Booker coming in once again. Really appreciate that, man. If we get Farley or Surtain at 9, would you be willing to trade up if Collins slides to 30?
I like Zaven Collins. I do not think he is a guy that I'm willing to move up in the first round. I really like the depth of this stack linebacker class, the off-ball linebackers. Mm-hmm. And I mean, every single year there are really good guys taken day 2. So yep. I'm trusting Fangio's eye, and hopefully they can get a guy there. My guy, honestly, I am a huge fan of Cameron Mcgrone from Michigan. Yep, Michigan. I know that he dealt with an injury this past year. So he was a little bit off, but you put on his redshirt freshman tape and he looks like Devin Bush out there. I mean, he's extremely intelligent, and the Michigan fans were beside themselves that he declared this year. He's just I believe just a redshirt sophomore. He played those like flash games his first season. But anyway, I really like his tools. I also really like Browning from Ohio State. I know Ohio State's defense was abysmal last night. I think that cover 1 deep safety is not only going out in the NFL, but maybe in college as well. And that's what Ohio State does. I mean, typically they have the cornerbacks so they can live with that. Not the case this year, not the case last night. But still, I think that cover 1 type of cornerback or that scheme is not really the fit. So honestly, I've been thinking about this more and more. If the Broncos aren't in on quarterback this year, and with how this are at quarterback in the top, and with how this cornerback class stacks up, we could see them kind of mimic last year's class. Instead of wide receiver back-to-back, could be cornerback.
It makes sense. They need depth big time. Callahan's on his last year of his deal. Boye probably gone.
Yeah.
Your boy from Iowa has been up and down, hasn't really proven himself to be a true quality starter yet. But right now, I guess here's my issue with trading up. If you don't know that Drew Lock is for sure your guy, I don't want to waste draft capital trading up, because I'm guessing you're going to have to probably give up something from 2022 to make that trade. And I'm just not one that's willing to do that right now. That's my only issue. I like the player, and I like the idea of trying to really improve that back seven of the defense. But it just, like I said, there's enough guys there, especially at the linebacker position. I'm willing to stay put and see what we can do.
Yeah, and it's also, you're talking about the back end of the first round, and that's kind of what the Bills did when they took Josh Allen. They also then traded up to go get Tremaine Edmonds. So if you like the guy enough, by all means, go get it. But I think this is a really good deep linebacker class. You can get guys day two. Chaz Surratt is out there. He's really talented. Ohio State actually has a couple guys. Nick Bolton is another one, and I'm sure there'll be a few more that step up. I know there's also, I saw some people talking, we had a flash there for the Notre Dame linebacker, Jermaine Owusu-Koramoah, who is, I'm going to have to work on my names again, just like last year, the Notre Dame linebacker. I'm not really sure he's a linebacker when I've watched him. I know that guys are getting smaller, and everybody's thinking like, hey, Darius Leonard is playing at 215, but Darius Leonard has like the wingspan of an offensive tackle. Yeah. I don't think, he's also an anomaly as well. So
he makes a lot of sense for the Raiders now that they hired Gus Bradley
for a cover 3 scheme. Yep. I agree. He's perfect for a robber. You can play him in the slot, but also, are you casting Jonathan Abram off? I know he's been freaking horrible.
Yes,
horrible.
I would be.
But okay,
he needs to be gone tomorrow. When he's hurting not only the other team but your team as well, physically, emotionally, mentally, it's not a good fit.
I just real quick side story here, just because I can actually offer a little bit of insight here with Jonathan Abram. This might help some people hate the Raiders even more. Jonathan Abram played for Mississippi State, really talented guy. And a couple years ago, his last college game, the University of Iowa played Mississippi State in a bowl game. And Iowa has a tradition where they're very connected with the Children's Hospital in Iowa City. And Jonathan Abram started a scuffle in front of kids having chemo and like cussing out the Iowa players in front of all these kids in a pediatric hospital in Tampa Bay. So I don't like you, Jonathan Abram. You fit perfectly on the Raiders. I hope you stay there and continue to blow coverage. So
yes.
Anyway.
Amen. All right. Stu Meat, how do you feel about Kevin Costner as GM from Any Given Side?
Any Given Side. I don't think I've seen this movie, so I wish I could tell you. Wasn't Kevin Costner
from Draft Day?
Draft Day. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. And there's also a movie called Any Given Sunday. But I think is this a troll? Is this
I don't know. Hey, he worked the board. He got lucky that he made some teams panic, but I guess that's kind of part of the mental games that you try to play in the draft.
Didn't he take an off-ball linebacker?
He did, instead of a quarterback.
Unrealistic.
Yeah.
Fiction.
He ended up getting an off-ball linebacker, or I guess an edge guy, kind of hybrid guy, and then a punt returner.
Well,
I think a few extra draft picks kind of thing. But not the direction I would personally go.
That's like the opposite of Moneyball. So that's I appreciate it very much. We got Brian Greenfield coming in too. Thank you very much, Brian. Would you guys, I think it's a you, be mad if we take quarterback first round, either moving up or at 9? And yes, I know we're in need at cornerback and linebacker, but if Drew isn't the guy, we don't draft for the position. We are even more years from doing anything. This is really the biggest question that the Broncos are going to face for a long time. Yes, if you look at just an immediate snapshot of where this team is at, cornerback is such an obvious hole that it would be hard for them to compete without addressing that position. It's that bad. The Broncos, it's crazy. Hats off to Vic Fangio. I know a lot of people are really pouring on him for the defense is supposed to be so great. You're playing a late 3rd round pick at boundary cornerback 1 and a guy you just picked off the street at boundary cornerback 2 with another street free agent playing the slot. Right. And the Broncos played the 3rd hardest schedule this year defensively, and they still had a average output on defense. That's incredible.
Right.
Like imagine the excuses the offense would have if they were playing a late 3rd round tackle and an undrafted free agent rookie at the other side for the offense, or the same for wide receiver. You're talking about cornerback. That's just as valuable, if not more valuable. So cornerback's up there, but the biggest thing he's getting on here, right? And you're 100% right. The first question you have to ask every single year when you're looking at your team, do I have the quarterback to lead me to the promised land? Yep. If yes, you look at elsewhere. If no, you have to look at the options. And I mean, right now you could say yes or no. I think there's probably a little bit of preconceived notions and maybe some bias in there for some folks looking at it. I really tried to remove myself and be analytical. It's hard to do, I know. And so far, Drew Lock is going to be coming up on 25. He's had 18 games. He's been probably a bottom 5 quarterback statistically. He is trending up. He does have the tools to be a good quarterback, but it's not enough to be married to him. I mean, hell, I'm at the point where I'm texting other girls. You know, it's like, oh man, I'm saying, hey Trey Lance, how you doing, girl? Ooh, I saw that. I saw you in your pro day over there. You're looking good. Like, I'm definitely sliding the DMs. So, I mean, it's the quarterback question, and I know that Drew Lock could still end up being the guy. Gosh, how great would that be if Drew Lock did end up the guy? Yeah. You just kind of have to start to hedge your bets and think about other possibilities, especially with the new general manager coming in.
Right, exactly. And like we said, 2022 class, now it could get better. I mean, nobody saw a Joe Burrow last year, and he played really well.
Late 3.
Right, and so that's a real possibility. But right now here, 2021, there's 4 quarterbacks that most teams really like. And then there's a reason to.
4. Name them.
Okay. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, and Zach. Oh my gosh. Zack Wilson. There we go. Sorry. Wilson. All those guys are ones that you could see. All of them have a lot of the things that you see translate well to the NFL. They're either halfway athletic or really athletic. Justin Fields and Trey Lance are really athletic. I mean, Trey Lance had 1,000 yards rushing last season. That's pretty darn impressive from the quarterback position, and was a great thrower too. I mean, had 28 touchdowns to 0 interceptions throwing in the air. And so again, those are guys that translate well to the NFL early on because they don't have to have everything right with their arm right off the bat. When things break down, they can use their legs to escape. And you and I had this conversation earlier this week about Drew Lock's athleticism. How far is it? I mean, it's good enough, but you see a lot of times where he doesn't use it well.
He's so bad off script. I mean, let's just be completely honest. When he gets out of the pocket, he goes full idiot. And he's throwing the ball, especially when he goes to the left. I don't know what it is. He goes to the left, and then he's like, you know what? YOLO. And he tosses up a bad ball. And he has the athleticism. We saw it in college where he could make some plays, but it feels like he's out of control when he breaks the pocket and his mechanics go wayward. And there are flash plays, especially when he climbs the pocket and then escapes. But when he sometimes just rolls out, it's just the decision-making goes, and so does the accuracy. And that's something I really like about Justin Fields and Trey Lance is while they do use their athleticism to extend plays, they do a really good job of throttling down. They buy the space, and then they slow down and recompact their base and their technique, so that way they can reset their feet and deliver a good ball. So I just haven't seen that from Locke. We saw it more down the stretch, though. I will give that to him. So we'll see. There's tools there. Right. Like if I did it all over again, I probably would still take Drew. I would have been fine taking Drew Lock in the first round because he had the tools to do it. 18 games, though, it's going the wrong way. So we will see. Cody Potter coming in. Cody, it's great to see you. We always appreciate you coming in. It's always good to see your face there. We both are kind of in the hat gang where I don't have I borrow my wife's makeup light sometimes, and she's like, you need to plug that back in. So I just, whatever. But okay, we got Cody Potter coming in here. If we hire Peyton, not Patton, I heard he has ties in Detroit, and with Vaughn contract on the books in his last year, do you see us making a trade for Stafford? There are multiple things to parse out here. Number one, I don't think the Broncos are going to be in on Stafford. It does seem like people who are more connected than myself seem like it's teams in the back end of the first round, more of those insta contenders that are going to be more interested in Stafford. And those teams are going to offer up their first round pick. There's a clear drop off after quarterback this year. I will say, Carl, I do think that the narrative right now is that Mac Jones will be in the conversation with those quarterbacks. We're going to have a conversation about that ourselves. And we definitely will at some point, probably multiple times. And I'm not even going to entertain Kyle Trask there. But anyway, the first thing is bringing on Stafford. I don't think it's going to happen. What do you think? I mean, I think the Broncos have to give up number 9 overall. And if they won 2 games down the stretch and they were picking, what would they be like then? 17? Then we're in a conversation for Stafford.
Right.
But not at 9.
Right. Especially, I mean, the guy's been banged up big time. He's still got maybe 5 years of good production if he can stay healthy. and the Broncos have the offensive line to protect him much more than what Detroit has had. But he also isn't always right, and he hasn't always done the best job of protecting himself. So you're really banking on those 5 years being great. But you're right, for pick number 9, it's just hard for me to give that up for a guy that, like I said, has injury history, has some issues with turnovers, has some just a few things. I really like Matthew Stafford, but I just don't think he is a good fit for the Broncos right now with where they are.
If acquiring Matt Stafford made the Broncos a Super Bowl contender, you bet your rear end I would be in on it. I'm not interested in trading for a guy that just makes him a playoff contender.
Right. That's the thing is this is why there's a big difference between Watson and Stafford. You bring in Watson, and I know a lot of people are really poo-pooing the whole how much it's going to take to get him, of possibly 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, but the guy's a top 5 quarterback. You bring him in, and 2021 Broncos are Super Bowl contenders. That's where the difference is. Like you said, there's just different language of how you look at those guys.
And I know it costs a lot to bring on Deshaun Watson. So we are definitely getting off the rails here, but he's 25 years old and already a top 5 quarterback. He just logged the single best losing season of all time, which, the quarterback wins, shove it where the sun don't shine. You can take, Mitch Trubisky went 12-4 in 2018. You're going to take that over Deshaun Watson. Context is king, and quarterback wins after like a decade when there's been enough shuffling going on, and a quarterback, there's obviously some correlation in there because they've gotten to 10 years of play because they're a good quarterback. But still, like, that's 1 year means nothing. 5 games means nothing. It's as dependent on the guys around them as the opponent that's in front of them.
Right.
So Deshaun Watson, you set yourself up for a decade.
Right.
So it will be interesting. We got Brian Greenfield coming in here again. I don't even think we got to the end of that last question. Look, real quick. Von Miller, Cody Potter. This is a hard conversation to have, and I always say that I really try to be analytic and objectional with the stuff. Von Miller is somebody I have a hard time with that just because he's definitely somebody. He's one of the first people, like that 2011 draft was one of the ones that I was the first like all in on, and I loved Von Miller. I also liked Patrick Peterson in that draft, but it was like edge rusher or cornerback. I was already playing the positional value game back in 2011 as a freshman in college. But still, Von Miller, he's had 2 years. I know he had a lot of pressures 2 years ago, but he had coming off a bad injury. He's on the wrong side of 30, and he has a massive contract. I mean, the value that you think you can get for Von Miller, I think we're talking like a round 4 pick, which hurts. I mean, he's definitely better than a round 4 pick, but these teams are going to balk at that. They're going to say, you're just going to outright cut Von. Why would we trade for him when we could just renegotiate a contract anyway, when you're likely going to be forced to make a decision there? Right. So it sucks. I mean, Von Miller in a vacuum is much better, but the age comes with it. The injury comes with it. The little bit of trend down comes with it. And the contract. I mean, it's just, there's too many factors.
Nelson, appreciate you tuning in. Glad your buddy Zach cued you into our show. Appreciate it. And we're excited to have you for the entire offseason, hopefully, as we really dig into what we're moving on forward with the Broncos. But you're right with Von. And even Mike Liss said it when he did that interview of the different GMs. They were asked the question of, what are you going to do with Von Miller? Pretty much every single one of them talked about trying to get him to restructure. Because you can't, right. Well, okay. Extension, sorry. Restructure only happens when you have more years on the deal that you can push money onto those deals. Extension happens when you add more years to help lower the cap this year. That's the difference between those two, so we can get the language right on the show. But it just seems like they are pretty set that they're not going to keep Von at his current cap number. So it's either he goes somewhere else because he's not willing to extend his contract, or they get something worked out. I don't know which way it's going to go. I think Von wants to stay. I think the Broncos want him to stay, but it does have to be at the right price at this point.
Yeah, I agree. We should definitely get that other super chat up. But first, Carl, this is a great question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. This also like the picture, the meme here where the guy's about to get dunked in Cat in the Hat. Oh, Oreo. Thank you. Okay. We can move right on. It's absolutely Oreo. This is
not even a question.
It's not a question.
Yeah.
My mom makes homemade cookies. I've had them on the show before, and she makes a cookies and cream cookie where she like crushes Oreos and it's on top of the cookie, so it's like cookieception. I'm living it. We need to figure it out. I'm telling her to use. They're not sponsored the pod, but the HelloFresh boxes where they kind of like come in sealed into the ice packs. Mom, put some cookies in those and send them to me. I need them. I miss them. Right. I miss you too, Mom. I miss those cookies.
Yes.
But okay, we got Brian Greenfield coming in again. Thank you very much, Brian. Sorry if you guys just heard the smoke detector go off. Got to change the batteries. Honestly, I wouldn't be mad at all if they draft a linebacker or cornerback at 9. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at all also, but I just kind of want to, guys, this is Building the Broncos, and I want you all to kind of take this lesson to heart. When it comes to the draft, you're not drafting positions, you're drafting prospects. So 1 year, there might be a linebacker that's worth the ninth overall pick. That's not the case year to year. So you can't look at it as the Broncos have to go based on this pick at this slot, because otherwise you're just limiting yourself to whatever that draft class is. Every single draft class is its own class. I mean, you have the 2018 draft class where you had 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. And then you have the 2013 draft class where the first 2 quarterbacks are EJ Manuel and Geno Smith. You know, they're both quarterback 1 each year. You know, Geno Smith versus Baker Mayfield versus EJ Manuel. But I mean, it's year to year different. So I don't think you need to be able to assess that and not just think so narrow.
I think if we're looking at like some of the top guys of Micah Parsons, Caleb Farley at pick 9, I think you're not going to find any issues with that from us because those guys, I mean, we're still going to have to talk through all that because there's going to be a lot of questions with having no combine, possibly no pro days. Guys like Caleb Farley and Micah Parsons are hurt probably more than most prospects out there because of not getting into some of those interviews, not getting the medical checks, not being able to test to show that they are elite athletes. I mean, Caleb Farley was Dane Brugler's pick at number 9 in his mock draft for the Broncos. And I mean, part of it is the guy's a freak. He made, what's that guy's name that does the freak list?
Bruce Feldman.
Yeah. He made it 2 years in a row on his list because I mean, the guy is an absolute freak for his size. And I mean, he's one of the few guys that can keep up with guys like Henry Ruggs, Tyreek Hill. He can do that at the cornerback position and he's bigger than them.
Yeah. He's typically a guy who has the movement skills that Caleb Farley has are like 5'9" and 5'10". And Caleb Farley is like 6'2" with vines. So there are going to be questions about him, rightfully so. I mean, we've seen the last 2 years now. We have a good case sample of 2 years ago entering the draft cycle. Greedy Williams, no doubt top 5 pick. Has a bad season, tumbles down the draft bar, taken middle second round, was okay this year. Definitely not this no doubt cornerback. This year, Sean Wade, no doubt top 10, top 15 pick. I mean, we're talking about a guy that might need to go back to college. He struggled so bad this year. And if not, he's definitely not playing boundary. He's probably going to be a safety nickel. Yep. So taking a guy with only 1 year of high-end tape at the cornerback position, as raw as Farley is, because he is a wide receiver convert, there's just this 2021 draft, man. It is sketchy at the top. It is concerning because all the top guys at the positions the Broncos would look at probably didn't play. And the only one that really fits that did play, in my opinion, is Patrick Surtain. And I'm not a huge fan of Surtain. However, he is tremendously safe. And maybe in a 2021 draft, there's a little bit more value to that than normal. But I mean, it's a weird class. All these top guys opted out outside of the quarterbacks, and the ones that didn't opt out play wide receiver and tight end. And the Broncos aren't going to use the 9th overall pick at tight end or wide receiver. So it's a weird year. It is a weird year. And we got Jim coming in. Jim, it's always great to see you. You got to tell us sometime what's in your picture there. It looks like a little baby bird, but I cannot tell. The picture is too small. Either way, great podcast. Click those thumbs up. Jim, we appreciate you. Hope you're staying safe out there, and always nice to see you stop by. And we also got Dennis Woods coming in rocking the Mile High Huddle hat there. Or the Huddle Up podcast. I can't tell which one it is. We got Dennis coming in, though. Assume keeping lock for 2021 and pass on QB in the 2021 draft. If he busts in 21, is there a really good quality quarterback in the 2022 draft? Pass on a quality QB this year to get who next year? You probably like the earlier section where we kind of talked about this, but that's a really tough question to say at this point. I'll throw out some names right now for guys that make sense. I think right now, I hate to do it, but I'm preaching so much on the tools side. I think Spencer Rattler is the guy with the most tools. He's got just such a natural arm talent and movement. Now, that being said, he is apparently the biggest horse's rear end you'd ever heard. I mean, he had a fit and Lincoln Riley benched him. And I know there's Jennifer Pearson, who I've had back and forth with on Twitter for years because she's always saying draft the Oklahoma quarterback. And she's been right about Baker Mayfield. Granted, the Broncos didn't have a chance at either of them. But Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, they look like franchise quarterbacks. But Spencer, the tape, the tools are all there. I'm not sure about the football character. And then you have Sam Howell. I like him a lot. I don't think he's got the tools of any of the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft, but he's got a good sample size. He really does remind me of Baker Mayfield without maybe as much moxie and swag. But both those guys, I mean, probably you're talking about next year. If you want them, you probably have to trade up or 1 or 2 or earn 1 or 2. And I don't know. And I know Dane Brugler said Keaton Slovis is his quarterback 1 that he's heard for 2022. He was bad this year, man.
Yeah.
He was bad.
Not the strongest arm, no athleticism.
He's a great pocket mover, but like that quarterback, I don't trust a pocket quarterback anymore.
Yeah.
I don't trust him. Who's the last good first-round pocket quarterback drafted?
You can't say Jared Goff. I mean,
that's the only one that I can think of.
And even there, he's not top 10.
No, not even close. I mean, how much of
it
is Sean McVay being like the plankton on the brain, working the machine kind of thing going on?
Yeah, if he goes to a different organization, good chance the guy's out of the league right now. Honestly, he's been good, just not great. He's in that 12 to 15, again, that Derek Carr kind of range. But I'd even probably take Derek Carr better. I'd take Derek Carr over him. So there again, it's just showing the NFL has changed. The Peyton Mannings, the Drew Breeses, the Tom Bradys, those guys work because they are so advanced in their NFL intellect that they can just see everything so fast it doesn't matter that they're unathletic. But they've also had 15, 20 years of being in the league, seeing everything that could ever be thrown at them. You can't have that with a rookie. They have to have the time to process, and there's just very few offensive lines that give them that kind of time. And even if they go to the team with the best offensive line, you're seeing the teams that are successful, their quarterback has to be able to do things off script. And we've talked about this a little bit with Drew Lock. He's not been very good off script. He's athletic, but he's not very good off script. His footwork gets really wonky. This is one of the things that I said. If the Broncos are sticking with Drew Lock, I'm telling him, dude, go work on your footwork every single day for at least an hour a day, because
do you think he overthinks? Because I think what's the big discrepancy? Like, he had the biggest discrepancy in football this year from the play action versus non-play action. And I'm just curious if there's less thinking when you have the play action because your back's to the field for the drop. And so there's less that you have to process in the overall field manipulating. It's more half field reads kind of thing. Also, I think some of that has to do with he's got accurate issues outside the hash marks. So play action, the whole point of play action is to open up the middle of the field. Cornerbacks, despite what Madden says, cornerbacks are not really biting on play action. They're playing the receiver. But linebackers, safeties, absolutely. It's creating windows in the middle of the field that's where Locke has been more successful. Right. But I don't know. At some point, we're going to have to go through and break down every single game from Drew Lock this year and just kind of figure out what's going on here and what these numbers mean, because the numbers are not good enough.
Right.
Speaking of a good enough quarterback here, John Huston coming in here, or Houston. Beautiful picture there. Man, I'm still kind of a little bit taken out that John Elway's officially walking away. Feels like part of my childhood is just walking out the door as well. But, that's time marches on, right? What's the chance of us trading up to get the Mormon? Pretty sure it's going to be Lawrence, Fields, Wilson. Keep in my mind, mock drafts have QBs going higher. I think there's honestly a reality out there where quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4 because of what we talked about this year with the weirdness of all these top guys and how many teams are quarterback hungry. Now that means Miami's trading out, but it sounds like, I know Atlanta's still bringing a guy, but this organization is ready to bring on a quarterback to sit behind Matt Ryan for a year and then kind of begin a new era. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trey Lance went 4. You guys can probably tell. I know there's other people out there who are high on Mac Jones. If he becomes a great quarterback, I'm fine missing on that based on the parameters I've set for looking for my first round quarterback, because there's just a certain level of athleticism and arm talent you got to have for me to swing. And I just don't see that with him.
Yeah.
But I think it's very possible. Go ahead.
I don't know if he posted the picture, but somebody posted the picture of him after the game.
I know a body that's built by beer, cheese, and pizza.
Yeah.
And game recognizes me on that one.
Yeah. So he needs to get on the Tom Brady, the TB12 diet or whatever they call that. But anyway, you're right. It wouldn't surprise me just because of the urgency of needing quarterback. And like I said, 2022, not looking like the greatest class in the world. Teams are going to be a little bit antsy to trade up.
Yeah.
You got every team in the top 10 except for Cincinnati looking for a quarterback.
I mean, that's the truth. And I know some people will say, the Eagles wouldn't do it. They're bringing in a new head coach. Jalen Hurts was, guess what? unless you showed a lot, you're not married to your second round pick at quarterback.
Right.
And I left it in those terms for a reason.
Right. Now good chance Miami's not looking. Right. Good chance Miami's not looking for a quarterback, but they have to have that discussion being at number 3 overall. And Tua didn't exactly light the league on fire this year. He got benched, 3 times? Something like that? 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Like I said, Eagles probably not looking for a quarterback, but they're all having the conversation at least. There's a reason you're in the top 10, and it's most likely not because you had good quarterback play.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's something I also took away from watching this week. Out every single matchup this week, the team with the better quarterback won. Now, obviously, it takes a team to win, game plan, coaching staff, but Baker Mayfield is so obviously a better quarterback than Big Ben right now. Big Ben, honestly, he should probably retire. He looks horrible. Granted, we said that about a couple quarterbacks a few times, but God, he looked bad. It's not like they don't have weapons. They do.
Right. And Baker actually graded higher than Patrick Mahomes over the last month of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really makes me excited about the Browns is they have the best offensive line in football. Like, dominating. Bill Callahan in there. Like, this team, it's going to be a rock fight. The Chiefs are going to have to take a few punches to the face. And if they blink, this could be a game. I know it's a 10-point spread, and I also said Ohio State would keep it close with Alabama. So by God, don't take my betting advice when you head on over to sportsbetting.com. But I think it's going to be a fun game. I mean, all the teams left in the AFC, besides the Chiefs, are like built like old school Big Ten teams where they are, rock fights. Baltimore, the Browns, the Bills. These are physical offenses. And then you got the Chiefs who are playing Pac-12 or Pac-12, Big 12 football. So it'll be interesting to see. But what was the question here, Nick? You had me at beer, cheese, and pizza. God bless you, Duke. Also, that's a cool spider look you got going on there. Yeah, it's all about that. Here we go. Kenneth Booker. As long as we don't select Sean Wade, the guy gets burnt more than my pizza after a night at the bar. You know what? Sean Wade isn't a boundary cornerback. He had really good tape in the slot, and he probably needs to pack on a few pounds, but I think he could be a pretty good safety in this league, especially one in a scheme like Fangio uses with the match quarters. That being said, he struggled a lot this year. I don't know how you could take him in the top 50. We saw him in the slot last year. He's got the length and size, but you want to see him on the boundary. So things. It's what's scary about taking a guy that's a 1-year sample size.
Right. Well, and this is, he was voted as an All-American this year.
Sean Wade?
Yeah.
God, throw it out the window. God,
I know. See, it was name recognition because he was thought of as that top 15 pick last year, playing for Ohio State. And here they are getting ready. They just competed for the national championship kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he did not play that this year. There were better cornerbacks out there that deserved it more than him. So you're right. It's one of those, you're taking a big risk on any kind of, that's a 1-year wonder. Mitch Trubisky, he played pretty decent his 1 year in college, but taking that kind of risk on a guy, especially at the quarterback position, you like to have more than 1 year of tape, more, not just because you want to see more, but because the guy needs a little bit more time to develop. You don't see many 1-year wonder quarterbacks that come into the league and light it on fire.
Well, now you're talking me out of Trey Lance. We're going to have a lot of conversations about this quarterback position.
I know. That is the tough thing with him. It just, you see statistically, those guys just don't work in the NFL very often.
Man, so tough. It'll be really interesting to see what happens there. But anyway, back to the main point. Quarterback. This is always about the quarterback, right? So you have Browns, Baker Mayfield, far and away better. That's one win where the superior quarterback won. You had the Titans versus the Ravens. That one is kind of a punt. That one's the defense was probably the kicker because the Ravens have a better defense than the Titans. But quarterback, you could go either way, I think. And then you have the NFC, Tom Brady versus Heineke. I can't even remember. Obviously, Tom Brady is the better quarterback. Drew Brees versus Mitch Trubisky. Obviously, the better quarterback, Drew Brees. And then the other games. The only one, there's one I'm missing. I think it's an AFC one. The only game where the team that didn't have the better quarterback won was the Rams game. And all that took was the best cornerback in the NFL and the best defensive player in the past 5 years with the best young defensive mind in football. So really, again, it all comes back to the quarterback position. It seems so simple, but it's tough. We got Luke coming in. Luke McGiver. Good to see you, Luke. That's a nice smile you got going on there. I'm glad to see you have your seatbelt on as well in that picture. Hopefully you're not driving while you take that, though. Public safety. It's basically, And he just marks it out here. It's basically, is the quarterbacks are better Drew Lock than you draft one? That's the question you have to ask. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, because then it's not only is that quarterback better, but is the cost of going up to get that one that you like the most worth it in comparison to just Drew Lock, who you already have? So there's a little bit more nuance there, but still, that's the question. If you're not sold on Drew Lock at all, you have to put in the work. I don't know why people get so upset about that. And like there's all these, you're like, oh, these guys are projections. You're still projecting Drew Lock after 18 starts in the league. He's going to be 25 next year. I mean, I'd rather take the guy with 5 years left of contract control that hasn't had 2 years with injuries that cost him to miss time, with better college statistics and the higher pedigree. Right? I mean, am I taking crazy pills? Sometimes I see it on here, and I don't get it.
Right? Yeah, you're projecting that you think Lock is going to. If you don't want to even look at the quarterbacks of this draft, you are projecting that you think Lock is going to turn into a star quarterback. I mean, and I had somebody earlier today that was kind of doing that to me on Twitter, of kind of having this idea that you don't even scout these guys because it's almost like it's an insult to Drew Lock. And I was going, what has he done to earn that? He hasn't. Because like I said, he is a project, just like any of these quarterbacks would be a project. Now, is he a possibly quicker project because he's been in this offense already 1 year, so now he's going into second year. He's worked with all these guys. Yeah, there's some things there. But again, when he's played as a bottom 3-4 quarterback in the NFL for the last year, that's not really saying much.
And the thing is also, it really needs to be said. It's not just how many years in the league, it's the age you are also. And There's a reason that older quarterbacks tend to fail. It's because their physical skills start to depreciate before the mental side of the game can make up for it. That's what you see with a lot of these other quarterbacks when they start to fall apart. Like Cam Newton's a great example. He's a guy that I come back to in this example, where his physical tools were so good early on that his mechanics didn't have to be great. Yep. He just could power guys open and run the football. And now that physical part of the game is starting to go, he just doesn't have the mental side of the game as well as the technical aspects to overcome the diminishing returns on the athletic side. So it's just, it's kind of concerning there.
Right. Well, it's kind of the whole argument. I saw somebody make this earlier of Jamar Chase versus Devonta Smith. Who had the better season? 2019 Jamar Chase or Devonta Smith? You have to remember, Jamar Chase did it as a 19-year-old. Devonta Smith, he was 22. So, even though I would say Devonta Smith probably had the better overall statistical season when I'm looking at it of a per game basis, I'd still say Jamar Chase's is more impressive because he did it as a 19-year-old going against guys that are older than him.
Yeah, and there's something to be said. I think it was Joe Goodberry who we actually had on before we were doing the live stream podcast. We had him on. We were both wandering the quarterback desert there, but he'd been in there longer as somebody who covers and is a fan of the Bengals. He writes over for The Athletic now. But he talked about recently, he said that, there's a difference between talking about who the better player is and who the better prospect is. Because with prospect, you're taking traits and evaluation and projection into it, where obviously you can look today and you can say, I'd have no issue saying, Devonta Smith is the best player at wide receiver right now. Does that make him the best prospect? If he comes in at 165 and runs a 4.5 40, there are guys who succeed like that, but it's early picks. It's kind of an outlier. So would that make Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle better prospects? I would say so. So that's just, again, it's all this scouting minutia nuance that, we're just kind of doing patting our own backs here. Oh, look how smart we are. But still, I think there's something to be said about those conversations in that. We got John Huston coming in here again, or Houston. You got to let us know, buddy. Trey Lance is not good. He plays no comp, easy teams, horrible deep ball, stares down receivers. His guys are wide open. His comp is Kaepernick. I don't hate the Kaepernick comp as a floor. That being said, if you say his comp is Kaepernick, don't let Vic Fangio hear that. That led Kaepernick with a Vic Fangio defense got this close to winning a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So you better be careful there. I don't know, man. He's so young. He had Ivy League offers. A lot of Power 5 teams gave him scholarships to play safety, and he said, nah, I'm going to play quarterback. He was 18 years old in that season you saw. I don't think he has a horrible deep ball at all. He probably has, outside of, as far as like actual power and mustard on the ball, it looks like he throws a different football. Like we see good placement down the field with like Zack Wilson, who has a good arm. Don't get me wrong, or Justin Fields against Clemson. It doesn't have the same like weight behind it when it gets there. So I don't agree with this completely. I do think also Trey Lance footwork. I mean, he's got ballerina feet. It's so light. It's crazy for his size. He's got such good feet. So, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. Somebody like, I think Gil Brandt compared him to Steve McNair, Jordan Palmer, who's the quarterback coach who's going to be working with Drew Lock this offseason, which is interesting. I actually got to interview Jordan Palmer, but he's a cool guy, but he compared Trey Lance to Andrew Luck's skill set. They have a very similar profile. So it's a crapshoot. I mean, it really is at the quarterback position. So you could be right. Dane Brugler comparing him to, I think he's another one compared him to Andrew Luck. He could be right. So, we'll see. Yeah. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder for the quarterback position.
Right. And I mean, again, we're talking about guys that have great traits that you're projecting what they could be in the NFL. I mean, it's Josh Allen is a guy that had great traits.
The flashes were incredible. The lows were bad.
Yes.
But are we learning anything about that? I mean, Josh Rosen was consistent. He didn't have many wow flashes, but he was consistent. Bombed out. Same with Sam Darnold. I mean, let's be honest. It wasn't like Josh Allen level flashes. We're talking about freakazoid. And you pair that with football character, work ethic, leadership, intelligence. That's when the magic happens. Yeah. That's been Patrick Mahomes. That's been Josh Allen. So I don't know. I'm not ready to bury the guy. I mean, he had Ivy League offers, and he's the youngest quarterback in this class, I believe. He was the tape we're talking about. He was 18 years old. So if he goes in there and visits, granted, who knows what the world's going to look like in that time. I don't know what's going to be like next week. Gosh, every single week, something more happens. I'm ready for the aliens, man. Just take us away. But if he comes in and wows some guys on the tape, I'm open to it.
Yeah. Hey, Jay Roper. And you're right. And another thing to keep in mind with these guys, so much does matter where they go. Sam Darnold going to the Jets, worst place that he could have gone. About any quarterback, that would have been the worst place you could go. I'm not sure Trevor Lawrence goes to the Jets and makes them a contender or makes them competent with what they've been showing at the last few years and really doing nothing to surround the player. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks that are successful. Patrick Mahomes had a pretty good offensive line, has one of the greatest offensive minds in football as his head coach, weapons out the wazoo that set him up for success. Now, Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback, but that helped him. Lamar Jackson. This was my issue when he was in the draft. And it was the reason that I had him as quarterback 4 was I didn't think the Broncos could design an offense to take advantage of what he brings to the table. The Ravens have done a great job designing the entire offense around him, drafting players that fit him. Mark Andrews at the tight end position. They have 3 or 4 tight ends in that place that are just outstanding. Developing the running game, big offensive line, fast guys on the outside to really get down the field, push the defense back while Lamar Jackson can either throw it deep if they decide to step up to stop the run or take off running if he needs to. They designed the entire offense around him. So that's what you have to be willing to do for any of these guys. Even Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have to, he's a little bit more scheme averse because of his skill set and what he brings to the table, but you still have to work to surround him with the right pieces to make it work.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that's true for almost any quarterback. Like even John Elway didn't get it done until his skills were starting to diminish and they built a team around him. Quarterback is probably 25% of the equation when it comes to the overall roster. Now starting quarterback is 25%. Now that's a huge chunk.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a huge chunk. That takes you, from, if anybody's grading out there, that takes you from an A to a C real quick if you're missing 25% of your grade, but still. It takes a team still. It's wins and losses are team stats. And we have WE coming in here. Good to see you, WE. I'm always curious why there isn't another period. Like where's the period after the E there, WE? You got to let us know what's going on. Is it missing? Is it left there intentionally? Was it a mistake? The world needs to know. Up at night, where's that last period? Is there more there? Anyway, give me Lance or Fields over Wilson. Wilson is a one-year wonder with an injury background. Lance Fields have more tools and traits. The one thing I will say is that I think Wilson, how do I put this? He has shown a bigger variety of the types of throws that he can make. And I think there is some value to that. You can plug him into the Kyle Shanahan offense, which I'm not just saying that, there's a lot of steam that the 49ers are going to make a big push to go get Wilson. So we will see if that comes of age. I mean, it's also kind of talking about the difference between the NFC and the AFC, the quarterback situations. You put a competent quarterback on that Niners team, and we're talking about a team outside of Green Bay that could be a contender next year. I mean, that's how bad the NFC is compared to the AFC at the quarterback position. And we're talking about how important that is. But I have no issue with any of these quarterbacks. I still need to do a lot more work, and I am looking for all 22 on North Dakota State. I have some feelers out there for that. But still, I like all these quarterbacks. Right now, I would have it ranked Trevor Lawrence 1. He's unattainable. It is what it is. I'd have Justin Fields 2 just because I trust the overall body of work, and I feel like a lot of people are pooping on his Northwestern game and Indiana game when I could do the same thing with Trevor Lawrence with Georgia Tech or LSU last year. When you play that many games against good opponents, sometimes you're not going to have it, but they're young and there's plenty of tools there. I'd have Zack Wilson 3. Then I would have Trey Lance 4. But still, if you want to arrange 2, 3, 4 any way you want, by all means, that's your prerogative.
Yeah. I'm coming around more to Justin Fields being number 2, just again because the athleticism, no matter what, he's going to bring that to the table. He's going to be able. Such a
get out of jail free card. I mean, did you watch the Titans versus Ravens this week?
I did some.
The Ravens were looking pretty pitiful, and it was like a 3rd and 12, and then Lamar put on the Jets. And I know there's nobody who's an athlete like Lamar Jackson at quarterback, but still having that get out of jail free card, especially during the mental throwing development of the quarterback position, and especially what it does for your red zone offense. I think it's something that I really want on this team. And I think it's such an important part of building a young offense and a young quarterback these days.
Is that a Yamaha behind you? Yes, it is. I was trying to remember. I've changed guitars here. I had one of mine kind of stolen. The guy asked if he could borrow it for a weekend, and then he left town and never came back. So I had to get a new guitar.
Hashtag Carl's new guitar fund.
Yes. But no, you're right. At each of these quarterbacks, there's different things I like about them. Zack Wilson, I think he's probably the most creative of the 4 in the pocket. I think his ability to manipulate where pressure's coming from and to step up and to keep his eyes down the field, I think he maybe does the best of any of the guys. He probably has the worst arm of the big 4.
Really? I think I would say Justin Fields has the least arm talent of the 4.
I mean, it'd be close probably between the 2 for me. But like I said, each of them have elite traits that I can see translating well to the NFL. I think Zack Wilson is also maybe the best fit with Pat Shurmur because of his quick release. He makes a lot of quick decisions, gets the ball to his playmakers, lets them go make plays. That's exactly what Shurmur wants to do with his offense. That was part of his problem with Drew Lock, was that the guy just holds on to the ball sometimes too long, doesn't find the open guy, sometimes ignored half the field because he just locked on to his first read and just wouldn't get off of it. And so I think Zack Wilson fits that a little bit better than probably Justin Fields or Trey Lance, especially right off the bat. Now, Trevor Lawrence is just Trevor Lawrence. I mean, let's just kind of take him out of the equation with this kind of stuff because, one, Broncos aren't going to have a chance to get him. But I like them all for different reasons. And I can see them all being successful. I can see them all failing depending on where they go and how teams try to use them.
Yeah, it will be really interesting. And I mean, a lot of it comes down to the new general manager. I mean, if you listen to Vic Fangio read between the lines with what he said, it doesn't sound like he's at all married to Drew Lock. And also, if you take context of what he said in the past about self-evaluating his team, he says that he really likes to step away for a month and then come back and take the tape as a whole because he does not want to be influenced by recency bias or how guys played down the stretch versus how they were overall. And all of that stacks up. Probably not the best for Drew Lock because he was much better down the stretch. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. Drew Lock he's going to be 25 this upcoming season. And there is enough arm talent there for him to be a solid quarterback. I really do believe that. Now, the mental side of it, the processing side of it, the decision-making, there's all questions there. But, we can't control it. So we'll just continue to put our opinions out there and hope for the best. But, man, we really appreciate you guys. We probably should get out of here. It's been over an hour. I know people were kind of starting to there's starting to be a movement, people hoping for an hour and a half long show. I'm not sure how Chad would feel about that, given I think it's something to do with the downloading the file. But still, it's an easy out for us. Also, as Duke likes to give me a hard time, I got to go take care of the dog. So I appreciate you guys for that. But Carl, we got to go. I'm going to kick it over to you for the readout since I was here with the intro. Do you want me to do the readout? So you guys were very much.
I closed it on myself.
I got it. I'll take over. I'll be the closer here, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on Building the Broncos. Agree with us, disagree with us. Yeah, that's what makes it great. You just got to come at it with a open mind. I think that's really important. A lot of people just get too in their pants about people with opposing viewpoints at this point, especially something like talking quarterback. So, you got to be able to have these conversations. But Carl, you had a really good George Paton quote today. Not Peyton, but the former general. There was one that really stuck with me. What was the one about the ideas?
If everyone in the room has the same idea, someone's not thinking, or something like that.
Freaking put it on a shirt. that's a great one.
It's yeah, exactly. We need different ideas. That's why I like the idea the Broncos are looking outside of the organization. They're looking at guys that even haven't had ties to the organization, kind of giving that fresh eye perspective. That can only help the Broncos.
Amen. I love that a lot. Guys, also make sure you follow us on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also make sure you follow John K MHH. We wouldn't be able to do this show without him. We really do appreciate all the work he does behind the scenes. I always like to tease him that I'm going to bring him on live, but I don't think he would appreciate that, even though he's looking rather dapper today. Oh, he's tempting. There he is. See, look at him. He was trolling me to do it.
So close.
He was egging me on. So that's not even my fault. I had to do it. Guys, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com for all of our written content and the Mile High Huddle community board. There's a lot of chats going on there, a lot of football discussion. Obviously, Carl has a piece coming out talking about the great Dane Brugler's mock draft. Who did the Broncos go in Dane's mock draft there, Carl? You might as well just spoil it for us.
They had Caleb Farley at pick number 9, and the kid from UAB.
It's an edge rusher. Jordan Davis? That's the Jordan Davis is the defensive tackle from Georgia.
Man, I'm just blanking.
Michael Davis, something like
Jordan
that.
Smith.
Okay, well, Carl will make sure before we get out of here that we get that name right. Yeah,
Jordan Smith is his name. And if you Google his name, he is not the first one that comes up. Some singer that was on The Voice or something comes up. But anyway, he's not well known, but he is a guy that I think will be well known very soon. I was really surprised when I turned on the tape. First game watching, the guy just popped, and it was against good competition. It was against Miami, and he just dominated. Now, kind of guessed wrong because they have an athletic quarterback. Sometimes went and hit the running back and left the quarterback open for a big play. But no, I think you're going to like him when you start watching him.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Will be fun to see him. And I also really like that Caleb Farley pick for the Broncos at 9. Also, I'll have a content coming up here pretty soon as well. So yeah, check it out, guys. Also go to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. That can really help us. I haven't seen a comment on there in a bit. So guys, I'm challenging you. Go to iTunes and leave one on there. Say Nick sent you. I'm looking for it. And whoever does, guess what? I will blast you on Twitter. I will take a screenshot and share it because I'm looking for that. I'd really appreciate it. Also, guys, make sure, best thing you can do for us, though, like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. That can really get us out there. Also, click those thumbs up, share the episode on your social media platforms. That's all great. And doing so can really, really help us continue to bring you these Denver Bronco deep dives. Also, one last Twitter shout out. Follow us at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. You guys are the best. We appreciate it. Taking the time to join us today. Obviously, it's going to be a very interesting offseason. Another offseason of talking about the quarterback position. We're going to be talking about the Vic Fangio defense. We'll see what happens there. But, man, it would be sad if you guys weren't along for the ride. We really appreciate you. So we, wouldn't be here without you. Carl, what do you got the rest of the night?
I got my rowing machine. I got to go get a little session in here before I go to bed. I got one in at like midnight last night. So
it does not sound like you're talking about working out. I will be completely honest there.
No. Yes, I'm going to go get the rowing machine going and try to get something in, and then maybe do a little more watching of these quarterbacks and kind of seeing if there's anything. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out my order. Haven't nailed it down yet.
Well, awesome. Well, guys, make sure you also at Carl on Twitter. If that guitar is still in the background, at some point we're gonna make him sing like Carl's top 10 big board, and he's gonna have to do it in song edition or something. But we appreciate you guys. I'll even join in with my violin. But stay safe. As always, go Broncos, and we will see you next week.